was thick with the scent of damp canvas and machine oil as Eddie E.C. Collins wheeled his latest creation out from the shadows of the dilapidated storage tent. The carnival was stirring slowly, a motley collection of tents and faded banners flapping listlessly in the gentle breeze. The troupe gathered around, their faces etched with a mixture of skepticism and faint hope. Sal Marconi, the gaunt ringmaster with his patched coat and top hat, stood front and center, his eyes gleaming with a spark of unyielding optimism. "Ladies and gentlemen," Eddie began, his voice trembling slightly beneath the weight of the moment, "I give you the future of the Fool's Carnival, the whirlwind wonder." He threw a dramatic arm over the contraption, a rickety assembly of gears, pistons, flashing bulbs, and what looked suspiciously like repurposed bicycle parts. The machine hissed and clanked, lights flickering erratically, and a faint smell of burnt oil wafted up, mingling with the dusty carnival air. Maggie O'Hara folded her arms, her dark eyes narrowing. "Looks like a death trap," she muttered under her breath, though a flicker of curiosity betrayed her cynicism. Lulu the clown bounced excitedly on her oversized shoes, her colorful patched costume swaying as she clapped her hands in delight. Harold the Snake Jenkins, leaning against a tilted game booth, gave a slow, calculating smile. "If this thing works, it could be a gold mine. If it doesn't," he shrugged, "well, at least it'll be entertaining." Eddie adjusted his thick glasses and wiped grease from his forehead. "Trust me, this baby will turn heads and open wallets. Just watch." With a hopeful flourish, he pulled a lever. The machine roared to life with a cacophony of clanks, whistles, and grinding gears. The whirlwind wonder jolted forward, its flashing lights casting wild shadows on the tired carnival tents. For a moment, a hush fell over the troupe and the sparse onlookers who had gathered. Then, with a horrifying screech, the contraption lurched violently. A cloud of smoke and sparks erupted as the gears jammed and pistons slammed erratically. The machine careened into a nearby vendor's cart, sending a cascade of peeling fruit and broken crates tumbling. Lulu let out a startled squeal as she was knocked into a pile of colorful balloons, bursting into laughter despite the chaos. Sal dashed forward, his patched coat flapping behind him like a flag of defiance. "Hold tight, everyone, we're still in the show," he shouted, rallying the troupe with his usual sardonic charm. Maggie lunged to steady Lulu, who giggled through the dust and flashes of color. Eddie stood frozen, grease-streaked and wide-eyed, the weight of failure crashing over him. But beneath the embarrassment, a stubborn pride glimmered. "It's not broken," he insisted, voice cracking. "Just needs a little tweaking." The troupe quickly set about damage control. Harold helped clear the wreckage with slick efficiency, while Sal coordinated repairs with a mixture of urgency and hope. Despite the calamity, the shared experience knit them closer, their laughter mingling with groans and the clatter of hurried work. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the battered carnival grounds, the troupe gathered around the ruined machine. The air was thick with the bittersweet scent of burnt rubber and faded dreams, but also the unmistakable warmth of camaraderie. For all their failures, for all the chaos and calamity, the Fool's Carnival endured not because of grand inventions or slick schemes, but because of the Ragtag family that refused to quit. And Eddie, still clutching a greasy wrench, looked around at his friends and thought, maybe, just maybe, this was only the beginning. The whirlwind wonder might have exploded, but the spirit it ignited within the troupe was far from broken. The real show, it seemed, was just getting started. The evening air hung heavy with a mixture of humidity and anticipation as the Fool's Carnival settled into its usual rhythm, albeit a bit more frayed around the edges than usual. Twilight bled into the sky, painting the worn tents in dusky pinks and purples. Maggie O'Hara stood near the edge of the midway, her sharp gaze scanning the crowd with an intensity that belied her athletic frame. The familiar creak and groan of the aging rides melded with the sporadic laughter of the few passing townsfolk, painting a scene both melancholic and alive. It was then that she saw him, a silhouette too familiar to ignore, a figure leaning against the chipped paint of the carousel's faded horse, eyes fixed silently on the worn Carnival banner fluttering in the warm breeze. Heart pounding, Maggie felt a rush of memories flood her senses, the cold nights on the streets she had escaped, the bitter words exchanged long ago, the reasons she had run. The man's presence was a jolt, a ghost from a past she had tried to bury beneath layers of cynicism and hard-won survival. Sal Marconi noticed her tension immediately. Tall and gaunt, his patched ringmaster coat seemed to swallow his slender frame, and his top hat sat at a rakish angle. He approached with his usual sardonic grin, his voice cutting through the gathering dusk. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Mags. Or maybe just someone from the last disaster." His eyes twinkled with a mix of humor and genuine concern. "Care to share?" Maggie forced a tight smile, shaking her head. "Just an old acquaintance, nothing to worry about." But Sal was not easily convinced. Nothing's ever just nothing around here. You know that. Meanwhile, Lulu, the clown-bright makeup smeared eccentrically across her face, oversized shoes thudding comically on the wooden planks, was weaving through the midway with her trademark mischievous grin. She juggled a cluster of balloons with less grace than usual, sending a cascade of colorful orbs into the twilight sky. The children nearby squealed with delight, but the unintended chaos left a trail of toppled stands and scattered popcorn. Still, in her childish exuberance, Lulu managed to lift the carnival spirits, her laughter a bright note against the backdrop of worn canvas and frayed dreams. Backstage, the troupe was gathering beneath the cracked marquee light, its flickering glow casting long, wavering shadows. Sal's voice rose above the rustling canvas and muffled chatter, rallying the performers with a mix of sardonic humor and genuine warmth. "All right, fools," he began, eyes gleaming with that peculiar mix of hope and desperation that defined him. "Tonight, we hold on. Not just to the tent poles or the rigged games, but to each other. Because if there's one thing this carnival's good at, it's surviving the impossible." The troupe responded with nods and murmurs, their faces a patchwork of exhaustion and resolve. Maggie's eyes softened as she took in the scene, the found family she had chosen, flawed and fragile, but fiercely loyal. Later, beneath the marquee's cracked light, Maggie found herself face to face with the man from her past. The air between them was thick with unspoken history, the scent of popcorn and sawdust mingling with something more primal: fear, regret, and the tentative stirrings of forgiveness. Words were exchanged, cautious and sharp, each syllable a step towards understanding or further fracture. "You didn't have to come back," Maggie said quietly, the edge in her voice betraying her vulnerability. "Neither did you," he replied, voice rough but not unkind. "But here we are." The tension was palpable, but beneath it lay a fragile thread of connection, a possibility that the past might not dictate the future. As the night deepened, the carnival pulsed with its usual blend of chaos and camaraderie. Lulu's laughter echoed through the tents, a reminder that even in the midst of disorder, joy could be found. Sal's sardonic asides kept spirits buoyed, while Maggie allowed herself, just a little, to hope again. The Fool's Carnival was far from perfect, fraught with disaster and dashed dreams, but tonight, it was alive with the messy, beautiful chaos of survival. And as Maggie looked around at her troupe, at the flickering lights and the shadows dancing on the canvas walls. She knew that no matter what ghosts haunted her past, she was no longer alone. As the first tentative stars appeared overhead, the carnival held its breath, poised between the wreckage of what had been and the uncertain promise of what might come next. The night was far from over, and the fools were ready to face it together. The evening air was thick with the smell of stale popcorn and damp canvas as the carnival lights flickered and sputtered, casting long shadows across the faded banners and crooked booths of the Fool's Carnival. Sal Marconi stood just beyond the ticket booth, his gaunt frame outlined in the dim glow, eyes narrowed in cautious calculation. Behind him, the distant murmur of townsfolk drifting away from a lackluster game mingled with the creak of old wood and the faint clatter of carnival music, half-hearted, but still clinging to the hope of charm. Sal's gaze locked on a figure slinking through the shadows, Harold Jenkins, known to everyone as the Snake, not just for his slicked back hair and shifty eyes, but for the way he slipped through the troupe's defenses, always angling for a quick buck. Tonight, however, Harold's usual confident swagger seemed instead edged with nervous calculation. Sal's voice cut through the chilly air, low and sharp. "Harold, we need to talk, now." Harold paused, hands stuffed into the pockets of his cheap suit, eyes darting left and right like a cornered rat. "Sal," he said, voice oily smooth, "ain't nothing to worry about. Just making sure the carnival keeps spinning, you know." "Cut the crap," Sal snapped, stepping closer. "We know about the rigged games you've been running behind our backs, the money disappearing from the till. You're bleeding us dry, and the troupe's trust with it." Harold's smile flickered, unease creeping in. "Look, it's just business. You think I'm the only one trying to keep this sinking ship afloat?" Sal shook his head, frustration and disappointment simmering beneath his usual sardonic exterior. "We survive together, or we don't survive at all. You're risking everything for a few quick dollars. That's not business, it's betrayal." Meanwhile, the dressing area buzzed with quiet unrest. Maggie O'Hara stormed through the cramped space, her short, athletic frame tense with barely restrained anger. Her voice, sharp and commanding, sliced through the murmurs. "Harold, you've been selling us out. How long were you planning to keep your little side deals a secret?" Harold's eyes narrowed, but beneath the bravado, a flicker of guilt betrayed him. "I'm doing what I have to. This carnival's a dead man walking, and I'm just trying to get mine before the whole thing collapses." "You're tearing us apart," Maggie shot back, fists clenched. "We're supposed to be a family, not marks for your scams." The tension was palpable, a fragile thread threatening to snap. Into the charged atmosphere stumbled Lulu the clown, her oversized shoes clumping against the wooden floor as she juggled a trio of brightly colored balls. Her painted smile was wide, but eyes flickered with concern. Hey, let's not let a little snake bite ruin the show, okay?" Her antics brought a brief, uneasy chuckle, a momentary bomb to the troupe's fraying nerves. But the damage was done. Whispers circled like vultures. Trust was a currency rapidly depleting. In a shadowed corner, Eddie Collins fiddled nervously with a half-assembled contraption, the clinking of metal parts echoing in the silence. His greasy hands trembled slightly as he tightened a bolt, eyes glancing up at the heated exchanges. He wanted to contribute, to build something that could hold them together. But tonight, even his inventions seemed powerless against human fracture. Sal's mind raced. Confronting Harold publicly risked splitting the troupe irreparably. Ignoring the betrayal would doom them all. He needed a plan that balanced justice with pragmatism, a way to salvage both the man and the fragile finances. "Harold," Sal said quietly, stepping away from the others and pulling him towards the edge of the carnival grounds. I'm giving you one chance to come clean and help fix this mess. Because if you don't, this carnival and everything we've fought for will fall apart. And I don't want to be the one who has to shut it all down. Harold hesitated, then met Sal's steady gaze. All right, he said finally, I'm in. But this isn't over. Back with the troupe, Maggie's anger simmered into reluctant acceptance. Trust, she knew, wasn't something easily repaired, but survival demanded it. Lulu's laughter resumed, softer now, weaving through the tension like a fragile thread of hope. As the night deepened, the carnival's lights flickered on, uncertain but unyielding, much like the troupe themselves. The road ahead was riddled with challenges, but for now, they were still together. Sal glanced toward the horizon, breaking the fourth wall with a sardonic half-smile. In the grand circus of life, fools and snakes often dance on the same tightrope. Let's just hope we don't all fall off tonight. And with that uneasy truce hanging in the air, the carnival exhaled a weary breath and prepared for whatever the next act might bring. The morning broke with a hesitant light, pale and unsure, as if the sky itself was wary of what the day might bring. Beneath it, the fool's carnival stirs slowly. A ragtag family roused from their restless slumber by the call of duty and the stubborn hope lodged in the heart of their ringmaster, Sal Marconi. Sal, tall and gaunt in his patched ringmaster coat and top hat, was already pacing the uneven dirt patch they called their grounds, eyes gleaming with a mix of determination and delirium. The centerpiece of their survival, the main tent lay folded like a giant, wrinkled beast upon the earth, its canvas faded and spattered with years of rain and dust. All right, you beautiful fools, Sal announced, his voice carrying a theatrical flair that made even the most cynical among them smirk. Today, we raise the heart of this carnival. The big tent, the showstopper, the dreamcatcher. Maggie Mags O'Hara, short and athletic with her dark hair tied back in a no-nonsense ponytail, rolled her eyes but didn't argue. She was already moving toward the heavy ropes, her fingers nimble and sure despite the chill that bit at her skin. Dreamcatcher, huh? Just don't let it catch the rain again like last time, she muttered, hauling a coil of rope over her shoulder. Eddie E.C. Collins appeared next, his messy hair nearly a halo of chaos itself, thick glasses perched precariously on his nose, grease stains decorating his perpetually rumpled clothes. Clutching a bundle of pulleys and metal hooks, he trailed behind with a distracted enthusiasm. I've been tinkering with the rigging system, he called out, nearly tripping over a tent peg. This time, it'll be safer and more dynamic. Dynamic is a word for things that don't fall apart, Sal quipped, eliciting a chuckle from Lulu the clown, who bounced forward juggling 3 brightly colored balls, her oversized shoes squeaking softly on the packed dirt. Her face was painted in cheerful hues, a stark contrast to the muted surroundings, a splash of joy in a sea of struggle. Harold the Snake Jenkins lingered near the ticket booth, eyeing the proceedings with a shifty grin and calculating eyes. His cheap suit was a little too bright against the carnival's weathered palette, but his presence was oddly reassuring in a twisted way. He was the one who could sometimes scrape together the funds that kept the lights flickering. Betty, quiet and efficient, stood behind her booth, meticulously keeping the books despite the meager sales. Tommy, the gentle giant strongman, hefted heavy stakes with surprising delicacy, his slow smile encouraging those around him. Nina, draped in colorful scarves, embroidered with stars and moons, moved with an enigmatic grace, offering cryptic words of luck and protection as she surveyed the group. Together, they formed a motley crew of misfits, united by a dream that refused to die despite years of running on fumes and spilled popcorn. The work was back-breaking and riddled with near mishaps. Maggie scaled the tallest poles with the agility of a cat, securing ropes with practiced precision even as a sudden gust threatened to rip the canvas from their grasp. Lulu's laughter bubbled through the tense air as she juggled and slipped on the loose dirt, narrowly avoiding disaster while lightening the mood. "Careful, Lulu," Maggie called out, eyes sharp but lips twitching in reluctant amusement. Eddie, meanwhile, was absorbed in his contraption, occasionally muttering to himself and chasing after a pulley that slipped free, only to be caught by Sal's quick hands and a wry comment about his timing. Hours passed, the sun climbing higher and casting long shadows as the tent slowly rose from the earth like a sleeping giant waking from a long, troubled slumber. The scent of damp canvas mingled with the sweat and dirt of honest labor, creating an aroma that was as much a part of the carnival as the popcorn stands and faded posters. At last, with a final concerted heave, the last panel of the tent was pulled taut, secured firmly by stakes driven deep into the soil. A sudden gust of wind swept through, sending a ripple through the canvas that looked like a wave frozen in time. The troupe stepped back, breathing hard, faces flushed with exertion and pride. Sal swept an arm wide, his voice ringing out, "Behold, the heart of the Fool's Carnival." Cheers and laughter erupted, a sound that felt like a bomb to the weary souls gathered beneath the sky. For a moment, they were more than failures and misfits. They were a family, a team bound by absurdity and affection. As twilight descended, they gathered around a crackling campfire near the tent's edge. The warmth of the flames flickered across their faces, casting dancing shadows that seemed to chase away the ghosts of past disappointments. Maggie's guarded smile softened in the firelight. Eddie's eyes sparkled with newfound determination, and even Harold's shifty gaze held a hint of sincere hope. Sal, never one to miss a chance for a show, leaned forward and broke the fourth wall with a sardonic grin. "You see," he said, eyes twinkling with mischief and melancholy, "this tent is more than canvas and poles. It's our sanctuary, our battlefield, and our stage. It's where the fools dance, dream, and sometimes, just sometimes, survive." Outside, the tent flaps rustled softly in the night breeze, a whispering promise of the chaos and laughter yet to come. The carnival's heart beat on, fragile but fierce, ready to face another day. And so, under the watchful stars, the Fool's Carnival held its breath, poised on the edge of hope and chaos, united in their foolish, beautiful endeavor. The morning dawned gray and unpromising, as if the weather itself conspired with Victor Langford's growing campaign against the Fool's Carnival. Sal Marconi, standing outside the main tent with his usual patched coat buttoned tight against the chill, squinted up at the sky and muttered a sardonic aside to the invisible audience he imagined watching him. "If the rain doesn't kill us, the paperwork surely will," he said, a wry smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Inside the cramped carnival office, Maggie O'Hara paced like a caged animal. The cluttered rooms smelled of stale coffee and dust, papers strewn across every surface. She slammed a thick stack of permits and notices onto the desk, the sound echoing sharply in the tense silence. "Rejected," she growled, scanning the official stamps in red ink. "Again, no fire safety certification, they say. The town's inspectors are dragging their feet, probably on Langford's orders." Harold the Snake Jenkins lounged in the corner, his shifty eyes flicking between Maggie and Sal, the cheap suit on his lanky frame somehow managing to look more threadbare by the minute. "Maybe we can grease a few palms," he suggested with a sly grin, fingers twitching nervously. Maggie shot him a glare that could cut glass. "Not this time, Harold. We're stretched thin already." Sal stepped inside, his tall frame filling the doorway as he tried to inject some levity. "Well, if we can't get permits, maybe we can just put on the show in the parking lot. Who needs bureaucrats when you have charm and tenacity?" His optimism was infectious, but Maggie's eyes told a different story, one of exhaustion and mounting pressure. Meanwhile, beyond the dusty perimeter of the carnival, Victor Langford sat in his sleek black car, the leather interior cool and immaculate. His fingers tapped rhythmically against the steering wheel as he made a call. "Hold off on the permits," he instructed smoothly. "Let them sweat a little longer. The sooner they fold, the better." His unsettling smile flickered briefly before vanishing into a mask of corporate composure. Back at the carnival workshop, the air buzzed with frantic energy. Eddie Collins knelt over a stubborn mechanical contraption, curious hybrid of gears, pulleys, and flashing lights he insisted would be the next big attraction. His greasy fingers fumbled with a loose bolt as Lulu the clown bounded in, her oversized shoes squeaking on the wooden floor. With a gleeful whoop, she sent a cascade of colorful props tumbling to the ground. "Lulu, careful," Eddie exclaimed, brushing off grease and bits of confetti. "I'm this close to a breakthrough." But Lulu just giggled, her bright makeup smeared slightly from the chaos. "Breakthroughs are messy, Eddie. You gotta expect a little fun along the way." Maggie appeared at the doorway, arms crossed. "Fun's great, Lulu, but we've got real problems. The rigging on the main tent's frayed, the generators are acting up, and the permits are a nightmare. We can't afford another disaster." Eddie sighed, pushing his thick glasses up the bridge of his nose. "I'm on it, but the truth is, we're running out of time and options." As the day wore on, the carnival felt like a pressure cooker. Every attempt to fix one problem seemed to unleash another. The generators sputtered and died during a test run, sending the lights flickering into darkness. The main tent's frayed ropes threatened to unravel under the strain of the wind. Maggie coordinated frantic repairs with a sharp tongue and steady hands, barking orders and smoothing frayed nerves. Sal, meanwhile, tried to buoy the troupe's spirits, his voice ringing out with theatrical flair as he addressed the scattered performers. "Remember, my friends, the show must go on. And if it doesn't, well, there's always next town." His humor was a salve, though even he couldn't ignore the heavy weight pressing on his chest. Late afternoon brought a brief moment of calm. The troupe gathered around a small fire pit behind the main tent, the smell of wood smoke mingling with popcorn and stale beer. Lulu juggled flaming torches, eliciting delighted laughs despite the tension. Harold nursed a bruised ego after a failed scheme, while Eddie shared his tentative progress on the invention. Maggie caught Sal's eye and gave a small nod of approval. They were holding together, fragile, imperfect, but together. But as night fell, the shadow of Victor Langford loomed larger, the subtle sabotage that delayed permits, the rigged inspections, the mysterious equipment failures was wearing at the troupe's resilience. Yet in the face of it all, a stubborn spark of hope flickered. The Fool's Carnival might be battered, but it was far from beaten. Sal's voice broke the night's stillness once more, a sardonic whisper to his invisible audience. "They say the house always wins. Well, maybe the fools have learned to cheat the odds a little." The chapter closed on that tenuous balance between chaos and order, despair and hope, sabotage and survival. The carnival's fate hung in the balance, but the troupe's spirit refused to bow. And somewhere in the dark, Victor Langford's smile widened, knowing the game was far from over.